Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Better Body Radio, and today we welcome the Fitness Maverick himself, Gareth Sapstead. He's been helping people from all walks of life get strong and look good naked since 2005. Gareth is indeed a CSCS certified strength conditioning coach, physique coach, problem solver, and forward thinker who has accrued tens of thousands of in-person coaching hours from celebs to athletes to busy professionals. From published books to a plethora of publications on some of the most respected fitness publications in the world, such as T Nation, Gareth is a prolific content creator and writer. You only have to keep up with his posts on Instagram account at the Fitness Maverick to see how evident that really is. Gareth and I connected initially after we both had articles published the same week on T Nation and have been interacting on Instagram ever since. I wanted to get Gareth on to discuss his approach to coaching and what inspires him to be so innovative with exercise creation and selection. I also wanted to dive into his thought processes around training some of his different clientele, from pro athletes to IFBB Pros. You guys are going to really enjoy this one, so buckle in, grab a coffee, let's get started. Hey Gareth, thanks for coming on.
Nice to be here, Ross. How are you?
Very well. It's been funny because I kind of mentioned to the guys in the intro that we had connected a while back after kind of being published, I suppose, in the same week on social media. And yeah, we've traded a lot of likes and comments since. And I think I've been wanting to get you on the podcast for a while because I think, as anyone who maybe follows both of us would see, is that, you know, your content is, first of all, it's free flowing. It's very consistent, but also it's a lot of very practical and, I suppose, what would be the best word to describe it? Give me a good word. Like, very inventive ideas around how to create different exercise variations based on what you have. And I think that's came in very handy in the current climate as well.
Definitely, yeah. It's actually been quite good for the business, to be honest. You know, a lot of my background is actually training a lot of athletes, and a lot of that kind of entailed me training them out in the middle of a sports field, just using, say, some mini bands or something like that. Yeah. And this was me doing this 15 or so years ago. So I had to find creative ways basically to load them and to make things harder and, you know, put load across their tissues and get them stronger and more explosive. And that stuff I kind of continued to use when I, you know, transitioned into more personal training and kind of mainstream clients. And, you know, even today, I'm just quite a creative person, especially with resistance bands. So yeah, it's served me pretty well in the current climate, and my own training as well. I'm still able to train pretty much with the intensity that I did beforehand, although, you know, with not quite the resources I did beforehand. But trust me, I'm looking forward to getting back into an actual gym as opposed to garage gym workouts.
I bet you. I think everyone in the UK who they got that glimmer of hope that it was going to be a consistent gym schedule, and then it got just completely smashed away from you in a very short space of time. But hopefully 2nd of December you guys are back to rocking and rolling, and hopefully isn't going to be a third or a fourth lockdown after that as well.
Fingers crossed. We'll see.
We'll see. I've got a completely off the topic type question. So I mean, I told Gareth before coming into this podcast that I had probably 4 or 5 questions I was going to ask him. But one that came to my mind actually, just as I was getting prepared to come on for this, is where did the name Fitness Maverick come from?
To keep the story short, the area of the country that I live in at the moment, I live in Leicestershire. When I was doing I'll give you kind of a bit of the background. When I was just completing my master's degree, which wasn't too far from here, I was actually poached by someone to help them open up a gym, and that gym kind of, we went as a bit of a partnership with this person, and I ended up becoming, I basically took the name like head personal trainer, but then I was kind of in charge of all the gym systems and things for it as well, which was a good opportunity at the age I was. And somehow it just kind of, the name picked up and people just started calling me a Fitness Maverick. And then this Fitness Maverick thing just kind of got put on a board on the wall. And then it just kind of became this thing where everyone was calling me it. And then it just kind of stuck after that. So, you know, since leaving that, you know, I've just kind of kept that name. I thought it was quite cool. People in the local area called me it. So, you know, or Mav for short. So it's just kind of stuck. And I think it goes along with the being creative exercises kind of thing as well. It just seems to work. I even recently, I bought a car recently, and I might even get the number plate changed to like MAV1 or something.
Nice.
We'll see. I keep updated.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a cool name. It definitely stands out, and people are just like, "Oh, this is like, Fitness Mavericks. Oh, this guy must be like a magician with fitness and movements and everything else." So yeah, I think it's for a brand, it's on point for sure.
It's good as a brand, and I'm kind of glad in a way I didn't come up with it. Otherwise, if I came up with it, it'd seem a little bit more cheesy. But actually, to say that other people started calling me it first, to me just makes it okay.
Very organic. It's like a kind of organic name. You didn't have to even force it or think about it. It was just like, well, if that's what the people want to call me, that's what the people get.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm embracing it. I'm making the most of it.
Seems like it for sure. And I'm sure as we dive into the podcast, people kind of get a bit more of an insight into that as well. So should we dive into question number one?
Absolutely. Go for it.
So given a little bit more background, given that you've already started doing that anyway at the start here, many of the people that are listening to this might not be 100% familiar with you, your work, your background. So tell us a bit more about how you got into the fitness industry, as well as some of the highlights from when you started right up to the present day.
Yeah, good question. I'm someone that is, people always take the mickey at me, but I'm someone that's pretty much unemployable in any other industry. I have no other skills. Just be put out there. I have zero other skills. I've never been employed. My entire career from the age of 16 years old was in the fitness industry. And in fact, the only job I've ever had where I have been employed and has been outside of the fitness industry, I worked in a nutrition shop when I was 15. So even then, it was kind of within the same area. So from 16 years old, and I was playing rugby to quite a high level at that point as well. But I worked part-time as a gym instructor in like a privately owned gym. And then as soon as I was 18 and I was getting all my qualifications at the same time and university and so on, from the age of 18, I was a full-time personal trainer. And am to this day, 15 years later. So I've always been within the fitness industry, always been a trainer. The difference being from the start, my idea of who I wanted to train was different to who I actually train now and who I want to train now. So when I was a lot younger, who I wanted to train were, because as I said, I came from kind of that rugby background. I wanted to train athletes. I wanted to train rugby players and soccer players and whatever. So when especially I went to university, it was, sport and exercise science degrees. It was master's degree in strength and conditioning. It was very much all geared towards training athletes because that's who I wanted to train. And then I had mentorships when I was training athletes in, a lot of elite sports teams. And I worked with a lot of athletes in groups and one-to-one settings and had some really good mentors at the time as well. And then I kind of came to that realization where at the same time I was working with some general population clients, that actually I enjoyed training the general population clients more than I did the athletes. Namely because the athletes basically were seeing what they were doing with you as like a secondary to what they really wanted to do. If they were told for the day, look, guys, you're in the gym for the next hour, take your boots off, whatever, then, the look on their faces were, could say, oh, where they, because they didn't want to actually be in the gym. They wanted to be out, they wanted to be running, they wanted to be doing what they wanted to be doing. So very little motivation to train. As I said, it was kind of, it was to improve their sport rather than, to actually have fun in the gym and try and improve, certain capacity in the gym. Obviously carries over to their sport, but they didn't really want to be there. And at the same time, training groups of 6, 8 up to, I've been stood there with 80 footballers in front of me at the same time with just me in the middle, trying to train them all with they've got one mini band per person. It's very hard to train people optimally, quite optimally, in that kind of environment. So just transitioning to that mainstream population just suited me a lot better because I had a lot more control over what I could do with them. So nowadays, as I said, I've been in private gyms, been in big box gyms. I've owned a gym. And nowadays, most of my work is online. And I've got a mixture of, I've got some athletes that I train online. I've got some, a couple of IFBB Pros at the moment. But the majority of them are just general population people that just want to look good naked, basically.
Definitely. And I think it's an interesting point you bring up about the kind of almost like the professional athletes to the gym pop, because I think a lot of trainers that actually happens, especially if they come from a sporting background themselves. For me, I played rugby, so I completely get it as well, though. You kind of feel like, oh, it'd be really cool to train those individuals. But like you said, almost when it's a secondary thing, and also because it's not coming out of their pockets most of the time, they haven't got that full tangible investment in the process. Whereas, like you said, with your gym pop clients, they're investing their time, their effort, their money, their emotional energy. Everything goes into that process. And like, well, if I'm going to invest in this, I'd be sure as hell getting the most out of it. And of course, there are exceptions to the rule. Some clients take the piss and all that sort of stuff. But for the most part, like you said, they're coming to you because they actually want to be there. And so, actually, Susie from down the street, or, who's coming to see you 3 times a week, she's actually going to come in and be an absolute warrior and give it everything. And that's way more rewarding for sure.
Absolutely. Just going off on a related note as well, actually, with online coaching, you talk about investment, and you kind of hit the nail on the head that people are actually paying for your service. And it's a common trend I see at the moment, especially in these lockdown conditions or in COVID conditions, with new trainers starting to go into their online space and actually offering really low levels of entry with their online clients, i.e. charging very low amounts per month. And what you're actually, obviously, which I completely understand, getting some clients in and so on. But when someone's only paying a very small amount, or you're training someone for completely free, they're just not invested. So, but you compare that to an online client that's paying, what you're worth, whatever that might be, then they're actually invested. They're paying X amount per month, which means they're going to be turning up to their sessions, because otherwise it's going to be a waste of their money. It's going to be, it's going to be a waste of their time and so on. So just, on a slightly related note, absolutely, just for a bit of advice for trainers at the moment transitioning the online space, don't give away your time for free. Your clients need to be paying that investment, because if they pay that investment, they'll put in that time, because they'll be invested in that entire process. So as I said, just, slightly related, but,
I like it.
throw that out there.
We spoke about this off air. Like, I come from a finance background, so I love financial analogies. And the way I can explain it to people is like, if you go into invest in something and you put a really small amount into it, your expected ROI is likely going to be quite low. You can't expect lots if you're not going to give a lot. Whereas you pay a coach who's invested, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of pounds in their own education. They've worked with a plethora of clients and been able to clearly demonstrate results. And they're able to get you fast track your results than if you were to go it alone or go to someone cheaper. Then that's worth its weight in gold. And so if you want that high ROI, then yeah, if they're going to be paying top dollar for your service, whether it's online or in person, then once they're investing, they're like, well, hell, I'm not going to miss out on this. I'm going to get my money's worth. I'm going to ask all the questions. I'm going to turn up to every session. I'm going to get there early if I can, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore. Great advice for new and young coaches in the industry is be generous with your time, but also value your own time as well.
100%.
Yeah, could not agree more. So speaking of coaching, you've obviously spent time coaching some athletes from some of the best sports teams across the UK. What were some of the biggest lessons that you took away from that particular time in your career?
Control the controllables.
All the time.
There's only so much you can control. And when, as I said, when you've got a group of 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever in front of you, there's only so much you can do with them. There's, you can be as creative as you want with exercises. You can be as creative as you want with their training plan. But as I said, there's only so much you can do from them. There's only so much results you can get from them. So when I'm going to say, even now I'll go into a professional sports team and I will, week one, day one, I'm putting together a battery of tests. I'm testing them. Where are they at now? So I don't know, 5 and 10 yard sprints, agility tests. I might, take a false platform with me or whatever. And I'm looking at that data and being like, okay, what's the low hanging fruit? What can I improve? All right, now here, this is the strategy I'm going to put in place to improve that capacity. Well, if there's only so much I can use, there's only so much equipment I can use, if there's only so many days per week I can train them on, then, you know, there's only so much I can kind of do with them. So I have to kind of have those expectations quite low. When I retest them again in 6 weeks, you know, what I'm expecting from them again, I'm not going to be getting miracles out of them. You know, I've worked with some professional sports teams where, you know, they've got fantastic setups and some of the best gyms in the world, but they just don't have the time, or they're not allowed that time. So they might have 10 hours a week allocated of training with them, but their head coach wants them to do 9.5 hours of that out on the field. So, you know, you've got half an hour with them all week in one of the best facilities in the world. There's only so much you can do with that. So, you know, one of the biggest lessons, as I said, that I've learned and that I use now is, you know, just control the controllables. There's only so much you can do with, you know, with the circumstances that you're in. You know, same with lockdown conditions at the moment. You know, there's no point worrying about things. There's no point kind of threatening about things, or people losing their gains. You know, there's only so much you can do with it.
You're not wrong. And I think, do you know what, who was it I heard say this? It might have been Nick Daniel. You know the Fitness Rebel? He was at
Okay, yeah.
Nick Daniel, I think that's his name. Fitness Rebel is what he's got going on now. Just I've seen his name pop up a lot recently, but I think it was him that I heard say recently, like a lot of people were wanting to try and almost be too cute or too fancy to try and replicate stuff they were doing in the gym. And I think I heard Luke Lehman from the Muscle Nerds actually say this as well. Well, you know what? If all you've got access to is body weight, and maybe you can get outside for a run or you can do some conditioning, just change priority for a while. Maybe just focus on getting a bit more mobile, exploring different movements, doing like more kind of varied quote unquote CrossFit style conditioning that you might have in the past. Not doing that. Explore different fitness qualities, and you actually might find that when you do go back to the gym, by improving your mobility, by improving your aerobic and your just overall cardiovascular conditioning, you actually get a hell of a lot more out of the gym when you go back to it again anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
that whole process, they were just kind of like,
yeah.
can't go to the gym. That's it. Life is over. I'm not training anymore. It's like, oh, come on, guys. Let's think outside the box.
And I think that's half the UK gym population. It's, you know, you can't go to the gym, that's it, what do I do, you know? Or the thing at the moment is that, you know, if you bought a kettlebell, something that would have cost you 20 quid before costs you £200 now. It's absolutely crazy. So people don't want to spend that money. But, you know, you don't need to spend that money. You've got your own body weight. Your own body can be your own gym. I recently just did a free ebook, basically, which I got together with a activewear brand. We put together this free ebook, which is just body weight core training, just using some creative exercises that you can do with your own body weight. You know, no basic boring planks and whatever. You know, some creative exercises that almost mimic what you can do in the gym with your own body weight. And I just released that for free because just to give people some ideas. Obviously, look, I get people's email addresses when they download that. So there's a business thing in that. But, you know, there's so much you can do with even just your own body weight. Just my own training at the moment, I'm lucky in that I've got a pretty decent setup just in my garage, and it's at the bottom of my garden. But, you know, I feel as though I'm lacking on things, especially like cables. I love a good cable, especially for putting things in good alignment. I've got cranky shoulders. So there's so many things that I do in cables that help me, you know, help me kind of put load across those tissues. But a lot more of my training at the moment, luckily I've got a Peloton just behind me in my office. So a lot of my training at the moment is just on my Peloton bike, because it's, you know, it's kind of what I've got there. And I'm enjoying using it. So I'm building up some aerobic capacity, you know, just in this kind of off time. And then when the gyms open back up, I'll probably be a little bit weaker than what I was before. But, you know, I've got some good solid foundations in there, and I might be able to handle a little bit more volume within my training maybe than what I did before. But yeah, absolutely, you know, just control the controllables and work with what you've got.
There you go. I think that's a perfect way to finish that question. Control your controllables, people. I think that goes across not just exercise. You just look at that in terms of the way people perceive the world and stressors, and even just like the actual gym. Times when right now, like COVID, like I'm worried about this, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about all these things that we literally have no tangible control over. It's like, well, if you can't control it, don't put energy towards it. Like, we can't control when, like, say, for example, I know when over here, when lockdown first happened, no one knew exactly when things were going to open again. It was like, well, listen, let's just plan. Don't think about planning. Like, what about 3 months from now? Well, none of us know what's going to happen 3 months from now. So let's just go week to week.
Exactly.
Let's plan for this week. Let's plan for this week. Let's plan for this week. Control the controllables. And that's what I said to you. I use that phrase all the time with my clients. Can you control it? Yes. If you're not currently controlling it, can you put things in place to eventually control it? Yes or no? And if it's a yes, well, go and get it done. And until you don't complain, until you've literally tried everything you can. And then, okay, you've tried everything. Can you now control it? No. Okay, let it go. Don't worry about it. And I know that sounds so simple, like you say, in nature, but I think people will have a tendency, and I've heard a lot of this because I'm sure you've seen this all over social media. People like all the memes, 2020 is the worst year ever, and da-da-da. And I'm kind of like, I don't know. I think a lot of that's down to perspective. For us, it's been a really fruitful year. And I think part of that is because we saw, right, okay, it's lockdown. We're not going to be able to train our clients. We're going to take a dip in income. But what have we gained back? We've gained back a little bit more time, a little bit more less traveling around. We're in one place. We can put time and effort into our systems, into our business, into ideating things that are going to help us come out of this whole situation in a stronger position than when we came into it. Lo and behold, we come out of lockdown in a much stronger place, and we just hit the ground running as soon as the gyms were open. So I think if we'd have taken that defeatist mindset behind that, it could have been easy just to wallow for 3 months instead of being on the front foot rather than just being like, well, you know what, it is what it is. I'm just gonna eat Ben and Jerry's and just sit on the couch for 3 months instead.
Well put, love it.
Cool. So I want to get into the next question. So we talked a bit about off air because I think you're in a situation, or you've kind of done something that I guess I'm looking to do in the next year or so, which is to kind of move predominantly online. So you've been predominantly online now for quite a bit of time. You're working with clients all over the world, everything ranging from, like you said, your Gen Pop to some athletes to even like IFBB Pro bodybuilders and physique athletes. And I think I saw that you shared one of them. Was her name Sheila? She had an incredible name. Was it Sheila?
Oh, yeah. Like yeah, Sheila Shoemaker. Yeah. She's a current online client. Yeah, she's really good. You know, literally do what I tell her to. She's fantastic, and she's a great scenario because she's got a nutrition coach that works with her on that side of things. Then I basically just deal with the training side of things. She originally approached me because basically she just wanted to bring up some lacking body parts and saw me as kind of the person to do that. I've been working with her now for 4 months. And as I said, she's been absolutely brilliant. That she does what she's told, and she's seeing the results from that as well. And she's someone good because, especially with someone that does what they're told, you can throw anything at them. You can experiment with them. You can change variables quite often. Initially I just threw her straight in at like a high frequency phase. So she was training, like glutes and hamstrings 3-4 days a week using a variety of different rep ranges. And she responded really well to that because literally she was just doing what she was told. She was checking in for every workout. She was ticking the boxes. I can see, the weight she's lifting, her sets and reps, and how she's feeling every day. So, I get the more feedback I get from her as well, then the better I can kind of adapt that plan as we go along, really. But yeah, she's been a good one.
Very cool. And I think that's actually a good way to segue into the kind of main part of the question, because I set this up as a bit of a two-part or two views from two different viewpoints that many coaches may get to a point where they experience this, where they might have, for example, someone like Sheila who is a top level physique athlete, but then of course you've also then got your Gen Pop or your athletes as well. So if we were to kind of draw on, like say someone like her, maybe someone who's say one of your Gen Pop clients, what would be some of the things that are actually similar between those two individuals, and what would be the kind of maybe the main differences between training someone like Sheila and training someone who's more Gen Pop?
Yeah, I think from an online perspective, the first one that's really obvious is that the differences in interaction with those as well. So someone like Sheila, it's, we might get some check-ins every week and that's about it. She won't be messaging me every now and then to ask too many questions. Whereas your general population client will be asking me a lot more questions as we go along, mostly because they don't have as good an awareness of what they're doing or their body positions or how things should be feeling as they're doing things. So in both scenarios, it's a case of you know, day one, where are they at right now? What do they want to work on? And then what do I want them to work on as well? With someone like Shoelace, it was, as I said, she approached me because, you know, she wanted to, judges basically told her she needs to work on her glutes and hamstrings and kind of that glute ham tie-in. So that's something she really wanted to bring up because that was a lagging body part. And, you know, originally getting some pictures off of her, see what she looks like from various angles. You know, you could clearly see that as a lagging body part versus the rest of her body. She's got fantastic lats, fantastic width, really good waist, fantastic shoulders on her, but you know, sort of that glute hamstring time was really lagging. And I also identified kind of upper chest, which a lot of females forget, but from a competitive physique point of view, that was something that was a little bit lagging. So, you know, from the get-go, I could chat with her openly about what she needs to improve and talk about certain parts of her body, you know, that need kind of bringing up really. Whereas your general population client, I'm not going to be telling them, you know, your glutes look a little bit, you know, a little bit soggy. Your hamstrings look like they're, you know, they're a little bit, you know, they're hanging off you a little bit too much. You know, you need to improve this, you need to improve that. You know, I'm not kind of giving them that same feedback. So it's completely different in that regard. You know, Shoelace, I get some pictures off, you know, some form checking pictures of her every week, just with her in her various poses, so we can see how her body's responding to things. With a mainstream population client, then I might be doing that once a month, and it's only once a month if they're comfortable to be doing that as well. So there's those differences. With my general population clients, I could be getting form check videos off of them for exercises every single day. For an exercise they might have messaged about last week or the week before or whatever, and I might be getting a heck of a lot of videos where I'm obviously sending them tips back of how they can improve things. Whereas Shoelace is literally, you know, I know how she's executing things. I know she knows where she should be feeling things. I might get the odd check-in off of her as far as, you know, an exercise goes. So, you know, that's kind of the main differences really. And at the end of the day, especially with Shoelace, there might be a date in mind for something. There's a specific date we're working towards. Whereas with the general population client, a lot of the time there isn't a date. If there is a date, you've got a wedding coming up, you've got a holiday coming up, I'm like, yeah, thank God for that, because it's something to work towards and you know it's in the back of their mind. Whereas when they don't have some kind of date in mind, it seems a little bit slow, a little bit on maintenance mode. I'm not working towards something. You need to constantly be reminding that person where they were and where kind of they're going really. And constantly, you know, I'm constantly reminding, especially general population clients, of, you know, where they were last week or the week before, and, you know, achieving personal bests and things. Whereas, you know, someone who's, who's an experienced physique competitor doesn't need those reminders. They just kind of take them with a pinch of salt because they've done it over and over and over again.
Yeah, definitely. Like those physique competitors are, you know, they know the logbook inside out. They're like logging that stuff every single week. They know, like, oh man, I've got RDLs that day. That's a big session that's going to take a lot out of me. They already know that. They're almost thinking 2-3 days in advance of that session, thinking, oh my God, that's going to absolutely ruin me. Whereas, like you said, Gen Pop client, they've got so much going on their plate. They're just kind of literally, right, they get in the gym and then now I'm thinking about training. I'm thinking about step through the door, and that's a big kind of mindset difference as well. Is that for the kind of more higher level or more intermediate and advanced guys, I suppose even Gen Pop or maybe a bit more advanced, have been doing this a long time. Just fitness at that point is such a big part of their life that it does consume more of their headspace. Whereas I think for Gen Pop in the beginning, I don't know if you found this, fitness is just not consuming that much of the headspace at that point in time. It's not as high a priority quite yet, and maybe it never will be. That's kind of okay, I suppose, as well.
Yeah,
it's not paying the bills, right?
Absolutely. So. Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where, you know, I could send a new program to one of my physique clients, and as soon as they're reading through the program, you know, I don't know, they read RDL on there and their glutes and hamstrings are twitching whilst they're reading it. Whereas your general population clients thinking, oh, what's that exercise? How do I do that when I get to the gym? Or am I going to be okay with that? Yeah, it's a completely different mindset to things. And even with the general population client, they might not have, I deliver online coaching via an app. I've just found it to be the most efficient way to do it. They might not open that new program until they get to the gym. So again, there's that difference, because whatever they're doing outside of the gym obviously is a lot more important to them. But physique competitors, and even people that have been going to the gym for years, and it's a massive part of their life, they're almost like robots in that, you can give them whatever you want, and they will do it. Whereas, there are a lot of other people that do need more hand holding, and especially at the start of things.
Yeah. So, I mean, you obviously talked about there about a lot of the differences, but if you were to say let's just look at it purely from more of a training point of view, because I think that's where most of the similarities may lie. What would you say, if we had to look at like stuff that's almost like regardless of what level you're at, and, regardless of what your goal is, what are some of the key, probably mainstays or similarities you would see between all the kind of different clients that you train?
I use it in my branding a lot, but everyone wants to look great naked. So it's the exact same thing. You can do an online consultation form with me, and you can write down whatever you want. You can write down, I want to improve this lift, and I want to do this, and I want to do X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, if you keep asking them the whys, it tends to be, well, I want to look great naked. Okay, why do you want to look great naked? Because it makes me feel good, and so on. So at the end of the day, if people want to look great naked, well, we're talking about losing some body fat, and we're talking about adding some lean mass in the right areas. Where someone like Shalace, for example, is adding lean mass in areas that are lagging, because she's going to be judged. She's after a certain look. So, we're trying to put load across tissues that we want to respond, because it's going to create a certain look for her. Whereas with the mainstream population, general population, we're putting load across tissues to, we want to create a hypertrophy response. But we're a little bit more, I suppose, a little bit more broad in terms of what we're trying to achieve there. We're trying to just achieve I call it like an X frame. So, actually having shoulders, lats, and actually having some legs to that V frame as well. I just call it an X frame. So we're kind of after that overall look. So I suppose it's almost just differences in, we take that analogy to a sculptor, with someone like Shalace, it's, we're putting the fine details on that piece of sculpture. Whereas with someone that's a more of a general population client, well, we're probably at the beginning here, we've got to knock off some big bits, get the big bits done to start off with, and then we can start kind of zooming in on those little areas, but at the end of the day, the similarities are, they want to achieve some form of, they want to build some muscle, they want to lose some fat. It's the same thing, whether you call building muscle toning or shaping or doing some bodybuilding, whatever, it's all the exact same thing. And you're probably going to use some very, very similar tools to achieve that. With Shalace, I'm sure she wouldn't mind, but she's someone that has had a lot of injuries. She's got a cranky shoulder, and she, as a byproduct of working with me, she's able to, she gets great results as far as her looks go at the moment, and she's responding really well to that. But as a byproduct of the training that we've been doing, we've been able to keep away from that cranky shoulder, and her shoulders felt, the best it ever has. A couple of weeks ago, she messaged me and just said, I was doing dips today. I haven't done dips for years. And for me, that was bigger than the last form checking picture we had, where her hamstrings were looking great. So that's like, yes, okay, something's working. But as I said, that everyone's just trying to create some kind of a hypertrophy response and build some tissue in certain places.
I think I was hoping that you kind of go down that route of, and it kind of end up being what I would kind of said, if we looked at more on higher levels, like just more general versus more specificity. However, the baseline of that general work is always there, right? Because, for example, there's certain movement patterns that both Shalace and your gym hot client would be doing. We'd be doing the exact same movement pattern, just maybe the intention behind it might be a bit different, or, the ability to execute that to such a fine degree of intensity and execution and loading and all that sort of stuff, maybe a bit more volume. That's kind of where, like you say, the main differences come in. There's a lot of the same stuff that's there, but that the level of specificity that comes in with something like Sheila just is obviously much, much higher. And like you said as well, I think I find that is that we almost think these physique athletes are just like machines, robots. They never break down. They never feel the way that a gym pop does, but and they were all human beings. And I know that for me, a lot of my gym pop clients I work with, for them feeling better and feeling like they function better, like most of the clients that I got for a period of time were from post rehab, because I worked in a clinic for a small period of time, part time, and so we got a lot of these people who were like, well, I really want to do this, but my shoulder is so messed up, or I've got an ACL, post ACL surgery, and always without fail, it was like, okay, yeah, I want to look better, but always they wanted to feel better as well. And I think that goes across all populations. People want to feel better, they want to function better, and they want to look better. And so I think it was quite cool, that example you gave, that even your physique, you know, that she probably felt like, oh, there's movements I can't do because of my shoulder. And her now being in a position where she can open up her training repertoire, that can be, for someone who looking at it from the outside might think, well, that's not a big thing. She can, you know, like, it's just a new exercise. But for someone who trains all the time, that's huge. Like being able to dip when you haven't dipped in years, or being able to press overhead if you haven't pressed overhead in years, that's a massive win for sure.
It's absolutely massive. And that kind of goes down to exercise selection as well. So, you know, we talk about being very broad as far as building mass is concerned to being very specific as far as building mass is concerned. You know, when it comes down to someone who's, you know, trying to put the finishing touches on you know, on that sculpture of theirs, you know, we can talk about things like, okay, putting you in optimal alignment to hit the costal portion of your pec, for example. We can talk about that stuff and why you're doing it and the exact movements required. Whereas someone that's just trying to add some mass to their chest at the beginning, A, don't care about that, and B, probably won't benefit as much from that. You know, you're just on about, you know, doing some flat pressing and some flat flyers and regular flyers or whatever, because we're not as concerned with those finer details and those kind of intricacies of training with those types of people. You know, obviously, you know, that stuff you might be using with them, but you're not necessarily A, describing that to them, and B, you know, you're probably not going to be using it as much either. And I think especially on the online fitness world and social media, and, you know, you and I have both written articles for some big people, and you have a lot of haters of people that don't like talking about the intricacies of certain exercises, and they're all about, well, just stick to the big basics, do the big basics. Well, yes, you can do the big basics, and for most of the time you should stick to the big basics, whatever those are in your head, the big basics. If people think it's a barbell bench, a barbell squat, and a barbell deadlift, then they need to think outside the box a little bit. But besides the point, you can stick to the big basics as much as you want. But it's those smaller lifts that actually, especially the more advanced you go, that you need to start doing. Those big basic lifts will help build some mass at the beginning. If you're healthy and you're feeling good and you're 18 years old and your testosterone levels are brilliant and you're sleeping well, great. But if you're 40 years old and you've got a cranky shoulder and you're 12 weeks out or something from a contest, and your upper chest is lagging, well, you need to get some specialized work within that area. And that's where those, you know, those special quote unquote exercises do start to come in play for that as well, because they'll avoid pain and they'll put load across tissues that, you know, in the right way. So yeah, big basic lifts, but also you need those other exercises as well.
Yeah, I think that summarized that incredibly well. I think I saw, was it James Sutton from Muscle Mentors described this really well recently. It was kind of like, you know, there's a lot of coaches online, seeing people like them and like really educated coaches like describing all of these. And it's obviously there to provide information, to get people to look outside of their quote unquote, there's one way to do an exercise. Actually a lot more nuanced than that. However, people are almost taking the nuance now. And like you said, they're applying this to the gym population when, like you said, in reality, for me, if I've got a gym pop client in front of me, they've hardly trained in years, or they're maybe just not got a high level of skill or experience. I just want to find like what's a horizontal pressing variation that doesn't hurt, that feels comfortable, and that they feel they have ownership of, and actually can progress comfortably for a period of time. Like you said, are you going to start talking to them about, well, actually, we're going to line it up with the clavicular portion, or actually, it's a more sternal press this time? Absolutely. Like you said, they just do not care. They don't care at all. But of course, as soon as you start working with, like, you know, and you'll have been lucky to do the same. And I'm lucky I've got a few now, some more intermediate advanced clients who they want to know about this stuff. That's super cool. We can geek out on that all day, but it's just always going to be what's the context and what's the goal of the exercise and what's the goal of the person in the training program and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Context is always key in any environment.
Massive. That was good tangents there. I enjoyed that. If not for the audience, just so let's get into that. Exactly. So I want to get into, because writing is obviously something that you're, you know, one, very good at, but two, that you spend a lot of your time doing, whether it be content or, you know, you've obviously published some guides and actually even co-authored a book in the past. I believe you've co-authored the book called The Complete Running and Marathon Book. You've released some guides like the Metabolic Edge Guide. And of course, it's interesting that you talked about Sheila bringing up our hammies and glutes, because you've also done a glutes and hamstrings guide. So isn't that quite fitting, right? Yeah. I don't know if that was maybe an inspiration for that. Who knows? You've also got an upcoming book due for release, I believe, as well. It's going to be called Ultimate Abs, the Definitive Guide to Building a Chiseled Six-Pack. That's sales 101 right there. If people don't snap that up just on the title, and I don't know what else is going to sell it. I hope you've got yourself on the front like absolutely peeled as well.
We're yet to do the photo shoot for that, so we'll see.
It depends how well that goes.
Exactly.
And it was quite cool that I saw that through Human Kinetics. That's not an easy gig to land. They're obviously very well respected in the industry, so that's a big one.
Yeah, it's and actually, if anything, as far as lockdown's concerned, that's the one thing it's allowed me to do. Well, that first lockdown anyway that we had in the UK was actually write that book. So I got the long story short, I had the commissions editor from Human Kinetics reach out to me just before lockdown, and we kind of sealed that deal just before the first lockdown in the UK. And then as soon as lockdown hit, it was kind of, you know, it was writing time. So, you know, any time that I might have been spent out, I don't know, at the local coffee shop or whatever, was just spent indoors at my computer writing, you know, this latest Ultimate Abs book. You know, it's about 100,000 words, but those 100,000 words are basically, it's exercise mechanics for your abs. It's, you know, how to optimally train your abs. I start out the book by basically stating that, you know, your abdominal muscles are no different, you know, than any other muscle in regards to, again, you know, you need to put load across those tissues. There's nothing special about them in terms of you need to be hitting them with 100 reps or something, because, you know, at the end of the day, to create some hypertrophy from, you know, from where it be your abdominals or your biceps or whatever, you need to be hitting them within those lower rep ranges, applying some progressive overload, you know, feeling your abdominals working and things like that. So I kind of start out with that anatomy, how you should train them, you know, why you should train them, etc., and just kind of set that picture. And then, I don't know, probably 2/3 of the book actually is just on exercises. So, you know, here's one exercise, here's what it does, here's why you may or may not use it. And, you know, next exercise. So it's almost like a giant manual as well, with training plans at the back for, you name the scenario, it's there basically. We obviously, Ultimate Abs, you know, to have abs, we all know diets are key. But for the book to actually be published and for it not to go through I think it needed approval from the American Dietetics Association or something like that, if it had any mention of nutrition in there at all. And the editors were very, very keen not to have to do that, because it's basically a really long-winded process. So we've managed to talk about creating a calorie deficit in that book without having to kind of mention nutrition in a way. We've kind of done it in a sneaky way. So it basically has everything in it you need to, you know, to have a good midsection and, you know, a good abs and strong core, really. As I was just saying, that's all finished. My deadlines for that were about 6 weeks ago. So I think I actually completed about 8 weeks ago. But we're just still waiting on the photo shoot. Originally, I was meant to fly over to the States to get that photo shoot done. For all the exercises, there's about 200 or so exercises in there, but that's obviously not happening now. So it's gone from me going over there to it probably happening over here, probably just me and a photographer now, instead of this whole thing in some studio in Nottingham, probably. So we'll see. You know, that's the only downside to it, but that's due for release mid next year. Unfortunately, I didn't come up with the title, so that marketing was, you know, all down to human kinetics. But yeah, it'll be good when it comes out. And as I say, it's the project I've been working on during lockdown. So yeah, just good to have it done and nearly there.
Sounds a bit. I'll need to get a copy for sure.
I'll send you one when it's out.
I'll hold you to that.
I will. I promise.
Nice. So this does come with a question though. I think that's awesome, and obviously we'll, you know, certainly from my side, when that book comes out, I'll 100% be sharing on my platform, like, go and get this, because I know just with the sheer amount of content that you give out for free, which anyone who follows you on social media would see, like, you're not exactly greedy with your information. You give out a lot for free. So the best thing, or the least thing those guys could do who followed you for a long time, is go and get your damn book, because you've clearly obviously put work into it, right? Sure. I wanted to ask a bit about, because obviously, you know, you're producing, you know, things like this, like the guides, the books, an obscene amount of social media content. What kind of got you into writing and publishing books? And then what's, almost, if you could kind of give us a small inside scoop into, like, what's your kind of creative process for coming up with all the content that you do, whether it be the books or social media?
Yeah, good question. To be honest, mostly from the writing side of things. I'll start out with that, because social media kind of came at a later point, really. So I had my own website, and I was published on an international website before I even had a Facebook or an Instagram account. So, you know, my mindset from the get-go was probably somewhere else, where nowadays wouldn't be as applicable. But so I said, I'll start with kind of that, really. So when I was growing up, I was a big reader of T Nation, or I think it's called T Mag back then, or, you know, so a lot of people that I looked up to were coaches that were, you know, really in the trenches. There were, you know, training clients on the day, and in the evenings, you know, writing articles for T Nation or whatever. And then at the same time had their own kind of blog websites. So those were kind of the people that I was looking up to. And you know, I'm a big fan of just, you know, emulating success. You know, what are these people doing? This is what I need to be doing. So even from the age of, I think, 16 years old, I actually had an article published on, it was a big website back then, that's since been shut down. And at 16 years old, I had no right to be published on this website, but it was called Muscle Talk. I think they now just they just do shows now, but muscletalk.com was a big website back in the day. And I had an article published. I had two actually on sets and reps for hypertrophy, and one on eccentric loading, how to use eccentric loading to build muscle, basically. And I wrote those when I was 16 years old, and for some reason they took them. And that feeling that I had at, you know, 16 years old was, bloody hell, you know, international website, it's massive, people are reading my stuff. It was that massive, you know, adrenaline response, and that massive kind of hit of dopamine. Yeah, love it. You know, that same hit of dopamine that you get every time someone likes your Instagram post or whatever nowadays, you know. But that's what I was getting back then. So I kind of caught the bug back then of having this long form content published on the internet. And to me, you know, the internet isn't going anywhere. It's going to be around forever. You can search articles that I've done, you know, 15, 16 years ago, and they'll still be up somewhere. Whereas a social media platform, you know, it's probably not going anywhere anytime soon, but tomorrow your Instagram account could be closed. Your Facebook account could be closed. Someone could take that away from you. Someone could ban you. So for me, writing online has always been the thing that I enjoy the most. I get the biggest kind of dopamine response from, and also is gonna kind of, I suppose, leave that. I know it sounds sounds cheesy, but kind of leave that legacy to an extent. It's stuff that people can kind of always search for. Social media, as we said before, you know, like little discussion before this podcast, before we start recording, I hate social media, can't stand it. But you know, it's another platform where I can publish hopefully good quality information on. And the reason same with you, we have to do it is because it's where people's attention's at. So, you know, as much as I love writing for, you know, T Nation's probably the one I write for most regularly. You know, you'll see my work in other places, but then, you know, I aim to have something every week in there. You know, they might have a big audience, but if you have something on Instagram, for example, there's a lot more eyes on your Instagram account than something that you wrote for, say, even, you know, arguably the largest training website in the world, T Nation, or largest respected training website in the world. So yeah, it's one of those things where you have to publish good quality information on Instagram, just to, as I said, be seen really. So it's kind of a bit of a love-hate relationship. And, you know, I like the fact that I've accumulated that following on Instagram, but it doesn't make me any better at what I do. It's just been a byproduct of just hopefully putting out good quality information. And then, especially the last couple of years, it's just been trying to improve the quality of that information I've been putting out. So better quality video content, spending a little bit more time writing captions and things like that. And just from a content creation perspective, being a lot more efficient with my content creation. So to go off on one a little bit, the way I create content is, you know, I'm a big fan of like Gary V, for example, Gary Vaynerchuk, great content guy. And I've been to a few of his seminars, and one thing I do take home from him is just that pillar content. So having a large form piece of content, so it might be a big article that you write, or a big article you might write for someone else, and then you might create micro content from that one article. So say ideal world, ideal week, I might write something for my own website, I might publish it on my own website, and then from that, so 2,000 word article with videos, I might pull out 200 words and one video that might be one post on Instagram or Facebook, or be a smaller article somewhere else. And then even from that, and I'm not someone that uses Twitter, but you could create, say, a quote from that 200 word that you've pulled out into a quote that you then put on Twitter as well. So instead of recreating content constantly, you're just creating different levels of content. So you've got some people that want to read everything and know the ins and outs of everything and read 2,000 words. And then you've got some people that might only want to read it broken down into 200. And then you might want someone that just wants short, sharp, quick, one sentence quotes. So that's kind of how I've managed to not spend so much time really creating loads and loads of content, because in a way, if you're smart about it, you can actually create a lot of content off of, if you're creating larger form content anyway. There are other areas that I kind of create content in different ways that I've experimented with, but that's kind of my main go-to. But yeah, I can't remember the second part of the question, if there was one.
I guess no. That pretty much covered everything. It was just like the kind of creative process. I think you covered that and what got you into it. Like obviously you said, being a young guy and kind of going, "Oh, that was awesome. I want to keep doing that." It's funny you mentioned about that style of doing it, because obviously I think Gary Vaynerchuk's probably influenced quite a lot of the fitness industry, as far as people have seen Jordan Syatt explode and they've been like, right, what's that guy doing? And for a long time it was the infographics, and then they moved on to kind of the next trend. I would almost say like the Twitter quotes are kind of the next trend on social media now. Like people are kind of, I said to Andrew on our podcast that we did, it's like the modern day infographic, the Twitter post.
Yes.
Like share them like wildfire. It's crazy. But I think there is something to, like you said, that kind of whole filtering down. I know a good friend of ours, Simon Mitchell, who runs Iron Paradise. Don't know if you're aware of Simon or not. He has the Iron Paradise podcast, but he did exactly the same thing. He literally writes a big ass article, and then he creates a podcast out of it, and then he creates like multiple posts out of it, and then the podcast gets chunked down into sound bites, and like you say, he maybe creates off of one long form piece of content, about 15 pieces of content. And like you said, that's just such an efficient way of, he's actually been at a point, I think, for the last 18 months, he's released a podcast daily. So he's literally got a
Wow.
set, like, and not all of them are guest podcasts. Some of them are just him. He takes the subject he did for his article that day and he makes it into a podcast. And that's just how he does it. He just has a whole, right, here's this one topic I'm going to talk about, and starting from the top, and that's him. Boom, done for like almost a week.
I know there's some people that do it the other way around. So they might talk on a podcast and do their own podcast. And then they might use like a transcript website like rev.com or something to transcript their entire podcast. And that podcast is then just turned into an article. And then that article then gets broken down. Or their podcast is filmed on YouTube at the same time. So it's a YouTube video and a podcast, and then that's broken into is transcripted into an article, and then that's broken down. So it's an efficient use of your time and a good way to kind of create multiple forms of content that's also native to that platform as well.
Yeah. So I think a great piece of advice for the coaches out there that are listening to this, have a think about that type of strategy, because it can be hugely time efficient. I'll tell
you what, one thing though I do struggle with is always what to write about. So, and that's actually one thing that I learned from, I talk all the time with Chris Shugart, the COO of T Nation, and I get some good feedback off him as to, look, what are you guys after? What you find good this month on T Nation? What are people reading? And he'll always give me some good feedback as to, what kind of their, what people are reading most, what people are searching the most, and so on. So he always kind of gives me some good feedback as to what they're looking for. But most of the time it's all on my own back, and I can write basically whatever I want. So kind of titling an article and exactly what to write about is always something that's a struggle. But actually, it's weird to say it, my biggest inspiration of what to write about is basically people trolling me. So I'll give you a good example. Okay, so just from today, I had someone on my Instagram feed, and I normally get it on like a really old post somewhere that, someone's got 0 followers and they just want to troll. Okay. And I had someone comment, I really hate the use of bands. It was something extent, you're absolutely stupid to use bands. Why would you use bands? I can't wait for the day where bands no longer exist. PTs everywhere are stupid for using them, whatever. Okay. It was something to the extent of that. And I put a polite comment back to them and basically said, why is this? My response is always to ask them a question. It's just a good way to, rather than fight fire with fire, let's just ask them why, So they came back with, I'm not a big fan of using bands because they're often misapplied to things, and they don't load you correctly. And then they asked me a question back, and the question back was, but I bet you're just another Instagram personal trainer and don't even know the answer to why this might be. Okay. So to that, and there's someone that, I don't know, it's not sounding big-headed, but I don't know, they've probably just found a random post somewhere and commented. They haven't gone on my feed. They haven't given me a Google, whatever. Okay. So to that, I've answered something to the extent of exactly why bands may or may not be applied. I've given quite a long answer back. I've referenced articles that I've written about applying and misapplying bands and why they shouldn't be applied. I wrote a nice thing to them that basically politely, because the exercise was, it was a Facebook post, basically. It was a banded Facebook post. And I wrote something to the extent of, if you mean not, the resistance curve of the band not being applied very well to the strength curve of your external rotators, then I actually agree with you in that a resistance band is not an efficient way to load your external rotators, because obviously there you're a lot weaker than you're there. And obviously the resistance profile of a resistance band is the complete opposite, and blah, blah, blah. So I just went into that a little bit. And he actually gave me a polite answer back, which was, great job, you've actually put me in my place, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But going back to my original point, that's now said to me, oh, actually, that's come out of my head as a response. That's probably something I should be writing more about and covering that subject more, because obviously it's something people are talking about, especially at the moment with use of resistance bands. And I know that, you know, unfortunate as it is, articles that are controversial actually get more views. So if I were to, for example, write an article of why you shouldn't be using resistance bands, then I know that article is going to be a great hit for whoever I write it for. So going back to my point, actually trolls do me a favor and actually inspire me to write something about a subject that might be a little bit contentious.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think like what you said, the best way to answer or to respond to someone sometimes is to actually lead with a question. And I think the person I'm learning that the most off of right now is who I'm being tutored by is Michael Goulden from Integra in London.
Okay.
There's a lot of the RTS stuff, and one of his big things about becoming an educator or becoming a good coach is this idea of increasing your level of curiosity. And so and he does the exact same thing. The way he communicates is so. He's a very good communicator. He always leads with many questions, because rather than just kind of going, well, that's bullshit or you're just wrong, it's like, oh, really? So, I mean, what is it about that you think does this? And it's always a certain way of doing it. And like you say, it always ends up returning much better answers. And actually, you often yourself learn something about, oh, well, I can actually understand why they asked that question, even if it's not necessarily a great question to ask. How can I help this person understand how to ask a better question the next time? If that's all that comes out of the exchange, then that's actually a really good outcome. So I think that's a really good example you gave.
Yeah. And sometimes even just asking, let's say you disagree with another coach, just by asking that other coach why, and without being annoying and why, but genuinely having a curiosity, sometimes it helps them come around to your way of thinking. So instead of arguing with them, you know, your perspective versus their perspective, just asking them about their perspective, sometimes they end up, you know, or you end up on the same page and actually agreeing about something. So, you know, always ask the why.
That's so true as well. We say about end up sometimes coming on the same page. So Tom Purvis, who created RTS, he actually talks often a lot about, he spent the whole first part of the whole course intro just talking about communication, talking about language, and a lot of the arguments that people are having in the fitness industry is they're actually talking about the same thing, but they're not using the same language. And I've always been a big believer in this, and it was so nice to hear him say this as well. When people say, oh, it's just semantics. Well, I actually think semantics really matter, especially with what we do. The semantics do matter, the details do matter, because if it's down to the fact that you're using this word and I'm using this word, but we're actually talking about the same thing, we agree on the same thing, but now we're disagreeing with each other, that could easily be avoided if we just took the time to understand how each other communicate. So I think that's such an interesting angle that whole answer went down. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very cool. So we'll get into the final question, and then we've got something that you don't know about, or that I mentioned to you about, but you don't know the questions, is the quick fire round.
Great.
People always look forward to that. It's usually something like this. Oh God, oh fantastic. There's the odd brave person that's like, bring it on. It's like, you clearly don't know what we're about to ask. So the final question before we get into that round is, you've got obviously the book coming up for release in 2021, but what is next for the Fitness Maverick?
I'm always doing something, but as I said, I'm always trying to improve what I'm currently doing. So rather than moving on to something new and then something else new and then something else new and kind of half-assing those things, I'm always looking back at something that I'm currently doing and how I can improve that. That being said, that's kind of a constant. I'm always looking back of how I can, you know, even something to the extent of how can I do a video better, for example. You know, can I employ someone? And that's something I've done recently, actually, is employ someone to do video work for me. And, you know, to do it that way, it saves me time, it's better quality, they're consistent videos. And you'll see actually on my Instagram feed, there are some, you know, within the same place as well. There's a lot, obviously I'm doing in my garage at the moment, but a lot of videos that are a lot more consistent. But as I said, at the moment, as well as trying to work on that stuff and trying to constantly improve those things, I'm also working on the Fitness Maverick app. That will be out hopefully in January. So I've got a few people that are working with me on that. So I've got people helping me with, you know, the marketing and business side of things. Yesterday I was doing I think 80 odd videos, talking over those videos, exercise instructions, etc. That are all going to be part of the app. And that's actually going to be that's something I basically listen to my audience about. I offer obviously high level online coaching. People pay a premium for that, like they do with your service. But then there are a lot of people that don't want to or can't afford to pay for that high level price service. I have ebooks and so on, but people kind of want that lower end product that they can take to the gym with them, they can train, they can, check in, have a look at videos and so on. So just offering like a $9.99 app to them, that's kind of my next goal really. And that's 75% complete at the moment, but that's what I'm spending most of my time on. I say January, but I'm not going to be releasing it until I'm 100% happy with that. And I will be sharing it with people like yourself to see what you genuinely think about it before I do actually release it to people and kind of offer it on the App Store. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. As I said, I've got some photo shoots coming up for the book, just to finish that off as well. And as I said, apart from that, it's working with my day-to-day online clients and making sure they're happy and lockdown ready, really.
Yeah, I think that first part to your answer was, something I think a lot of coaches probably need to hear, because it's easy in this industry to get distracted by shiny object syndrome and go and chase the thing or the next project. And I think actually, like you say, just looking at, well, actually, what's your core business? What's the thing that brings the most value to the people you serve right now? And like you said, if it's that high end coaching, whether it be in person or online, then taking the time to really like scrutinize it, ask your clients for their feedback, and kind of have other peers, for example, like review, like, oh, what do you, and actually even like I'm actually got a couple of guys that I've reached out to at the moment who have really, really successful online businesses that are kind of beyond where we are now, and I'm actually just like really curious, like really happy for your success. I'm just interested in a bit more about how did you do that. I'm genuinely curious, and maybe there's some lessons we can take and apply to our own business. So I think that's a big lesson to look at, is like, well, even though I might be doing pretty well, I might have been fair, even if you were really successful. I think the one trend I see with a lot of coaches is that they're always looking at, how can I do it just that bit better? How can I just get that value? So I think that's a huge lesson. And then the second thing with the app is, like you said, with a product, someone might buy that and say it's like an 8-week plan, or even it might just be a resource that is one of those things you can refer to forever. But it might only apply in their conscience for a certain period of time, or at certain times they might refer back to it or whatever else. But having that access almost to that monthly app, and people obviously you see who are crushing this right now are people like Joe Bennett, Eugene Teo, people paying that monthly subscription and having almost access to you, and they stay with you because they almost become, like, I think as Andrew described it, fans. They become fans of yours. They want to get more of you on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. So that's super exciting. I'm definitely keen to see what you've got in the works when it comes out.
And from potential business side of things as well, having that low end product actually can be a ticket to someone going for, more interaction with you, going for that higher end product and actually working with you. Going back to kind of your first response, hit the nail on the head with regards to, so many coaches out there looking for what's the next shiny object, what's the next thing I can do, what's the next thing I can do, and never kind of doing everything 100% and always being focused on just getting something out there. Well, especially lockdown as an example, especially in the UK, a lot of trainers have turned to that online coaching field, and they've rushed to be able to do that. They've put some systems in place, but and they might have some online clients now, which before might have been in-person clients. Now they've transitioned to online clients, and they've got some systems in place, but those systems have probably been rushed to be put in place. Well, instead of looking at how can I get another 5 online clients and make X amount from those? Well, how can I make that whole transition easier so that my current amount of clients I can train with, 5 hours less of my time each week? So I increase my capacity. How can that whole system from onboarding a new client to writing their programs, how can that be more efficient, as opposed to how can I just get some more clients? Well, if you make everything more efficient here, well, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to onboard new clients and to even have a bigger capacity with your online clients, as opposed to searching just for new online clients for the sake of it. And then being at the point where you've got a silly amount of online clients that are eating up your day, because you can't handle them and your systems can't handle them. You know, just keep looking back. What can you improve? What can you make more efficient?
Yeah, I think that's so important. It's kind of like, well, be careful what you wish for, and you want all these clients, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can't really handle all these clients. Oh, and now they're starting to leave because I'm not able to give them the time, attention, and care that they actually are paying for. So yeah, that's a huge point. I think that might become a little bit of a soundbite for the podcast when because we do these little kind of better body shorts where we share clips of the episodes. So that might have to be spliced up in there for sure. That's good advice for sure. And I think, like, you know, we've seen this even out here. The amount of coaches I've turned online in Dubai, and it's like online is not easier than in person.
No,
a lot of people seem to think that's the case. It's actually much the opposite. It's a much harder gig to really be good online. So yeah, for sure. So I want to dive into now the fun part of the podcast, at least for me, the quick fire round.
Right.
Let's dive in, shall we?
Go for it.
Yeah. What's an interesting fact people might not know about you?
Oh,
curveball right at the start.
That is a curveball. Interesting fact. Bloody hell, you've done me there. You've really done me. You might have done me there. I enjoy baking cakes. It's my favorite hobby, actually. So, you know, you might see these kind of healthy recipes that me put out on Instagram or whatever, but actually most of the time I'm baking. I don't know, I make a mean chocolate Guinness cake as an example. I'm quite an avid baker. I have people all the time pushing me to go on like Great British Bake Off and whatever. I'm like, no, don't you dare. Don't you send in that application. But yeah, for me to put loads of what I do actually make on my Instagram and Facebook, etc., would probably do me out of a job, and would probably make my clients very fat.
Or retain them potentially for longer.
You never know.
A bit of an unethical
supply and demand kind of
clients.
scenario.
I'll feed you my cake, and I'll get you in shape, and I'll feed you my cake, and it's just a vicious circle.
Exactly. Good idea. I like it.
Like Fitness Maverick by day, secret baker by night. There you go.
Exactly. Yeah.
So on that note, are you a savoury or sweet person? I think we know the answer potentially.
Oh, definitely sweet. Easy. Yeah. I would have dessert for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day if I could. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame it's not very good for a photo shoot though, is it? So not for now.
Unfortunately not.
No. So I know that you're a bit of a coffee snob like myself, so I'm very happy to hear that. What's your favorite single origin coffee?
Probably in Ethiopia.
Like it a bit Gareth?
Pardon?
Like it a bit fruity, do we?
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. For some reason, for some reason, I tend to like kind of more fruitier blends. So something with like a blueberry back note or something to it. And that's also why I tend to like a cold brew as well. So if I have like an Ethiopian, grind the beans, pop it in a cold brew, it almost has that slightly kind of sweeter, kind of fruitier taste to it. But yeah, absolutely love an Ethiopian.
I'm much more of a chocolatey, nutty South American kid.
Oh yeah, okay. See, they're the ones I tend to. Yeah, I'm not a big fan. I might do an espresso in those. That's what I
was going to say though. I'm double espresso. I'm the South Americans, but for things like cold brew, lattes, all that stuff, Ethiopia, Sidamo, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think we're probably aligned there. Yeah, and I recently got stovetop as well. I had someone, I've got a decent espresso machine. I've got a decent cold brew, and someone said to me, "You just need to do some stovetop coffee. Good old kind of French stovetop. Grind it up, put it in the middle, twist it on, chuck it on." Because it's like, I don't know, they're like a tenner to buy one or something like that. I was like, it really can't produce that good a coffee. It's just some cheap thing you chuck on the stove for if you can't afford a espresso machine. And I got one, and no joke, it probably makes some of the best tasting hot coffee out there. It's weird, and I would argue it's not as bitter as an espresso, you know, it's a great kind of morning brew. So I actually use the stovetop more than I do an espresso machine that I spent a few £100 on. You know, so I could have saved myself a lot of cash there.
There's the lockdown coffee hacks 101. Get yourself some stovetop.
Absolutely, and just a little Christmas trick as well. If you do a stovetop and you put a little bit of like cinnamon and nutmeg in with the coffee as well, and then you brew your stovetop, it's got a nice kind of festive tint to it.
Christmas coffee hack during lockdown 101.
Christmas coffee hack.
You heard it here.
That's it.
What's been your proudest coaching moment?
Good question. Probably not been a proudest coaching moment myself, but been more of a moment of, so my younger brother's a personal trainer. And so this isn't a coaching, you know, my proudest coaching moment. This is probably you'd probably put it as my proudest moment as a coach is actually seeing my younger brother as a coach and actually being a good coach. So when I moved to Australia, I basically handed my in-person clients over to my younger brother. At the time, not knowing how good a coach he was, how good a trainer he was. You know, he was living in a different part of the country. I knew he was okay. And, you know, I knew he knew his stuff, but in all honesty, I was kind of, I was trusting, I was putting a lot of trust in him, giving my clients, a lot of them I've been working with for a long time, giving them over to him because he was in a way a representation of me. This was 3 years ago, and he's retained every single one of my one-to-one clients. So whether that says that I was a crappy trainer and they like him, I don't know. But it's just been a proud moment in terms of just seeing him and how that's developed him, because I've also thrown him from, you know, he was a 10, 15 clients a week kind of trainer to, you know, I've given him 50, 60 one-to-one sessions a week and just thrown him at the deep end. So, you know, moment as a proud coach / proud brother, just kind of seeing him as he's kind of developed and retained that client base. And now I'm trying to help him with his online coaching side of things as much as I can anyway.
Yeah, that's awesome. His kind of younger brother came through and delivered the goods. Doesn't get much better.
Absolutely. That's it.
What's the biggest mistake you've made during your career, and what did you learn from it?
Doing too much too soon, definitely. I was very lucky. You mentioned it early on in the podcast, or in the middle of the podcast. The book, the Complete Running and Marathon book. Now, the Complete Running Marathon book was one that I published when I was about 21, 22. And that was published by Doyle and Kindersley, they're a big publishing company. And at the time, to have a book deal thrown at me was absolutely massive. Obviously I've developed as a coach and knowledge base, etc. since then. But at the time I was pretty knowledgeable, and long story short, the book was basically on everything you can do outside of actually running and the marathon training itself. So the strength training, the mobility training, recovery, nutrition, what that entails to optimize your marathon, your running economy and so on. So it was right up my street as far as, you know, the strength and the mobility and that stuff's concerned. And it actually turned out a really good book. But as I said, doing too much too soon, I had that success, quote unquote, early, which kind of caused me to take my foot off the gas a little bit after I did that, and almost let it go to my head and think, yeah, I've kind of made it. I've got a book published. I can write that I'm a published book writer now, and so on. And as I said, just kind of let it go to my head a little bit. And I think, as I said, just take my foot off the gas for 6 years, I think it did. And it caused me to not get my name out there so much, and not write so much for so many people, and not search for publications, and not search for help off of other coaches, even, because I think, I let it kind of build my ego a little bit too much, and I perceive myself as being a higher level than some people. So yeah, just too much too soon, too much success too soon. And we're now, we're way down the line, and obviously got a book deal with a arguably the world's biggest publisher fitness wise. And hopefully kind of the start of something even bigger, and doing it in a right way now, really. But yeah, just be careful of being too quote unquote successful too soon, whatever success might mean to any trader.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like doing too much too soon and getting complacent if things really kick off, kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Good lesson, I think, for people to learn, especially young trainers who you see a lot of this, like, or people who have put in all the time and effort, become an overnight success, even though it was 10 years to get to that overnight success. But then as soon as they become successful, all the things that got you there then fall off. It's like, no, that doesn't stop. We've got to keep that stuff going. So yeah.
Exactly that. You just got to kind of build on that momentum, really. And half of having this, doing the app at the moment, and a lot of stuff I'm doing at the moment, kind of that people don't see that I'm doing, is so that, especially this book, when this book comes out in the middle of next year, I've actually got some stuff in place so that people want to look into me. They're looking at a good looking website. They're looking for good quality content from me. There's an app that I now offer which is a lower cost than online coaching. So it's not just a case of here's a book, there you go. It's here's a book, oh, it's by him, let me Google him, let me have a check on Instagram, oh, this stuff also looks good, I want to learn more from him, I want to be better, and so on. So yeah, just kind of building off of that properly, really.
Awesome. So who have been the people that have shaped your career the most?
I was, as I said, as a young reader of T Nation, a lot of the guys that used to write for them are people that I used to look up to, especially in the early days. Charles Poliquin was a big one. People can say what they like about him, and he had a lot of controversial ideas. And there are a lot of things that he said that are a little bit out there. But there's also a lot of what he said that since he said it has come true, or research has been published on what he's claimed 10 years ago and is only just now coming out. People like Joe DeFranco, for example, who was writing for T Nation back in the day, he was talking about sled training, prowess training back then. And I think the first research paper that came out on a sled was in about 2005 in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research. That's the first time you saw in a research paper about sled training. So what was being spoken about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even in some regards, is being confirmed more recently. So, a lot of people that were forward thinkers, and a lot of those people just happened to be in T Nation, because T Nation, I think, likes to, encourages those forward thinkers. Are coaches that I kind of looked up to then, and still look up to now. Ben Bruno is a good example, actually, from an exercise creativity perspective. People might see him now as a quote unquote celebrity trainer, and might be aware of him because of who he trains. But actually, 15 or so years ago, he was writing for T Nation and coming up with exercises that that people even just now are only just discovering. So he was a good one as well. Eric Cressy, anything on the shoulder, Eric Cressy, shoulder and hip, great stuff. Mike Robertson, again, anything back related, again, another T Nation person. Christian Thibodeaux, absolutely brilliant. He still writes for T Nation. He's got a good online platform as well. I think I was one of the only people that bought his books when they first came out. Which I think actually now are selling even more, and these are books that are probably 20 years old. So yeah, there's a lot of people there, and I had kind of personal mentors as well, that aren't, I suppose, social media or web known, but some big mentors in my own world as well. A lot of people that shaped me, really.
Awesome, very cool. So we're going to get into exercises now. And I usually ask this question. It's usually your top or your favorite exercise and your most despised exercise. But for the top exercise, because you've got such an expansive repertoire. I'm going to give you 3. What's your top 3 exercises if you had to choose them?
3. Okay. The ones that most frequently appear in my programming are probably a trap bar deadlift.
Yep.
And that might mean from the floor, it might mean from a few inch block off the floor or whatever. Trap bar deadlift, A glute bridge, B. I tend to prefer glute bridges for clients over hip thrusts, multiple reasons. But a glute bridge would be that. And then I would probably choose something like an ab rollout, actually. Just a good go-to core abs exercise. So yeah, probably go with an ab rollout, just with a good old ab wheel that you can buy, off one of these dodgy websites or something. Yeah, good old ab rollout.
There you go. Most despised exercise.
Oh, easy, burpees.
So it's quite a popular. I think the burpees are racking up a fair tally on that question now.
Yeah. Apart from, Nick Tominello is a good one on this, actually. He calls them gorilla burpees. So jumping up into a wide out position so that your feet jump outside of your hands. So that you're almost jumping into a squat and then standing up out of a squat. That's what I consider to be a good burpee. I'm just not a big fan of those explosive actions repeatedly performed with, a lot of back bending going on. And look, with regards to spinal flexion, I've actually written about it quite a bit in the Ultimate Abs book, because there are crunches and things like that in the abs book. And so I've had to kind of mention the point of, is spinal flexion bad or good? And spinal flexion in research can pretty much confirm it. Spinal flexion is absolutely fine. But in certain positions, it's not going to be the best for you, and especially for most people that you're giving those burpees to. It's just not a good idea, those repeated flexions in that position. They also tend to be chosen by trainers that have got very little creativity or have run out of exercise to do. And I'll just give you some burpees to finish you off and make you feel good at the end. So that's kind of it's the mindset of when people give burpees. I'm sure there's far worse exercises out there, but it's just the common one I see being prescribed that I don't like prescribed for a lot of people who are actually doing them.
Yeah, Mr. Andrew Coates said the exact same thing. And my kind of point to him was and I obviously in my past was a competitive CrossFit athlete, coached CrossFit a period of time, and burpees. We literally taught it as a skill with the class, and if someone wasn't capable of doing it, they had to break into 2 movements, because if you can't do a push-up, you can't control essentially a push-up. Well, first of all, the first thing that's going to happen is you just end up that massive spinal extension, and most people just do not have the ownership of their body to do a burpee, pure and simple. And the only people doing it are people that can keep all that stuff rigid and tight, and they can handle explosive dynamic movements. And then you add fatigue on top of that. You have to be able to do it while you're fatigued as well. So there's a lot of variables that go into it. And I think people just, like you say, in group exercise classes, CrossFit, get thrown in the deep end way too early. So I agree on why people say it as well. But like you say, I don't necessarily agree. And I think Nick Tominello is big on this. He's like, you shouldn't just throw it out with the baby out with the bathwater. There's going to be a context where actually it's okay, but it's just maybe not for most people.
Absolutely. There's a lot of scenarios where burpees can be okay and can be a very good exercise. They are a very efficient way to get your heart rate up very, very quickly. And actually, CrossFit as an example, there are a lot of guys, a lot of coaches that hate on CrossFit. I'll be honest, I was one of them that kind of used to hate on it, but actually more recently, it's something that is not something I personally do myself, but it's not something I hate on. But because what people need to understand about CrossFit is that, like training for rugby, for example, it's a sport. You're training to be able to compete, to do X, Y, or Z. So for people that hate on, for example, CrossFit, of why in CrossFit are you doing sets of, 30 clean and jerks? Because clean and jerks are power exercise. You only should be doing them for sets of 5, keeping your form clean or whatever. Well, if you're in a CrossFit competition and you're asked to do sets of 20, 30, 40 clean and jerks, well, you need to train to be able to do sets of 20, 30, 40 clean and jerks. You're going to get sloppy. It's part of the sport. Just like if you play rugby, you're going to, you're going to get hit in the head. You're going to be put in positions that aren't ideal. So, people need to understand that. It's when some people, especially in general population, then might join CrossFit boxes that aren't necessarily applying principles very well and building people up to being able to do things like that and throwing them in at the deep end, then that's when things become a little bit iffy. But people do need to understand that CrossFit is a sport, and things definitely have their time and place when training for that sport.
For sure. If you could only travel to one bucket list location post-COVID, where would it be?
Right now, it's looking at Dubai, based on
what's available.
Based on what's available, it's looking at Dubai. We lived in, as I said, me and the girlfriend, we lived in Australia, but we, for some reason, never went up north. So we never went to Northern Territories. We never went to like Darwin and things like that. We never saw the Great Barrier Reef. We mostly stayed in kind of Melbourne, went up to Sydney, and kind of those areas really. So actually, yeah, to kind of north of Australia in that kind of area, Great Barrier Reef would be right up that bucket list. But I think Australia aren't letting people in for like 2 years or something. So that's not happening anytime soon.
I heard some Australia's becoming a rather dystopian place at the moment. They're not letting people in, not letting people out. There's all sorts of, but then it's really different between parts of the country as well. It's bizarre situation at the moment.
Either way, that's not happening anytime soon.
So that's what I do. Come out to Dubai, we'll get some training in, time at the beach.
Exactly.
Make it happen.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's make it happen.
Second, or should I say last main question, what is the meaning of life?
I bet you've got some really good answers from people on this one, haven't you? For me personally, it's to contribute to the next phase of people's lives. So, for example, for me to contribute to society in a way that will help, the next group of people, I suppose, coming after me. So it's to just, develop things and just make a better world of things, and to leave some kind of, if I can leave some kind of impression on this world, quote unquote, a legacy to some extent that's improved this world for what's to come after me, then that I'd be a happy man on my deathbed, really. So yeah, the meaning of life is to leave a positive and hopefully inspiring legacy for what's to come after me, in improvement on this current legacy.
Very nice, good answer. One of the most interesting answers we had was Cassim Hansen of M1 Education.
Okay.
Well, if you're going to be really technical about it, it'd be procreation for the betterment of the species. And I was just like, that's
standard answer from him, though.
I was like, of course he would go down the technical route. Well, technically we need to survive, so it's going to be procreation. I was like, you can't argue, so
you can't argue with that, no.
Right, like you said, super expected answer from him for sure. Who should we have next on the podcast?
Good question. Have you had someone like? Have you had any females recently?
Nowhere near as many, no.
Have you had someone like Megan Calloway?
No, I have not. I know who she is.
Yeah. So Megan's blowing up at the moment. Her social media following is getting absolutely massive. She was in, I think a couple of months ago, she was in Men's Health magazine as well in the States. So she's someone that's getting a lot of publicity at the moment. And she's very, very out there, and someone that's kind of questioned a lot in terms of her techniques, because there's a lot of stuff that you see her do that's that you and I might not do with our clients, for example. But she knows her space. She knows her clients. Her clients are people that want to be able to do pistol squats on one leg whilst balancing on a Bosu ball, for example. that is her clientele, and they're and they're people that kind of want to train with her. So someone like her, and she is a knowledgeable coach, and she's someone that does have a reputable background as well. But she's also, as I said, someone that tends to, from the outset, promote a way of training that many coaches wouldn't promote or agree with. So she'd be someone good to actually have on to kind of get her perspective on how she trains clients, and what her clients are actually training with her for as well. And, you know, a bit of diversity as well to get another female.
Yeah, I've actually got a lady called Kitty Blomfeld coming on soon.
Okay.
Australian. She's very interesting as an individual. Speaks very openly about a lot of stuff. So I'm quite excited actually to get her on, because she's quite a character, kind of just open book. You know,
that's what you want, entertainment.
Go from one post talking about, you know, female physiology to talking about blowjobs the next post. So it goes
brilliant.
all over.
I'll be listening to that one.
Do you know Megan? Can you do the connect?
Yeah, I'll connect you if you want to. Yeah, no problem.
Awesome, and that might be my pathway towards Tony Gentlecore, who I've been a fan of for a long time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, he'd be brilliant to have on as well. I'm sure he'd come on. Yeah, okay. I'll connect you after this to Megan.
Wonderful, that'd be awesome. And yeah, like you say, with someone like Megan, and actually I became aware of her through Tony. Tony had mentioned names, and
okay. I think they did a collaboration a while ago, didn't they?
Right, yeah. So I kind of, you know, I know of her, and you know, even though, like you say, if you had to really dive into the weeds, there might be a lot of stuff you disagree on. But what I like about that potential perspective is, well, this is what my clients come to me for, and there's a big message in that, I think. So that'd be cool to get her on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Last
I'll connect you guys.
Best place to direct people to your work right now?
thefitnessmaverick.com. So I'm currently in the process of upgrading my website. That's kind of like my home website. And to be honest, most of it is just articles. But from that, then there's links to my social media. There's links to services and things like that. But I'm trying to create a bit of a home and a bit of a database of things, really. So people just have some good quality information on there and can find me on whatever platform they want to after that, really. And if you want some free stuff as well, they can go there and download some stuff and give me your email address in return.
A small favor to ask. So what we'll do is we'll link that in the show notes. But Gareth, thanks so much again for giving up so much of your time, and we'll look forward to having you on, I'm sure, at a later date.
Pleasure, Ross, as always.